Hare Krishna. Good morning from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. It's our daily adventures in Srimad Bhagavatam. And today we're starting our 58th session we've called Meeting in Kurukshetra. And again from the 47th chapter, the 10th canto, also known as the Bhramara-gita. And today's topic, the last session the Gopis were teaching Uddhava about friendship. And today the Gopis will be teaching them further about the meaning of surrender. So I'll begin with a few prayers. Gora Graganya Gana Gotra Goloduharam Goranga Gura Tama Gopyara Kopa Briksham Gopala Gadha Ratidam Yati Singha Gora Govinda Deshi Kavaram Satatam Namami Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Shaivanadottamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Vedi Ramayanesh Chaiva Purane Bharate Tata Adavante Chamadye Chahari Sarvatra Giyate Mukam Karoti Vachalam Vangum Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shigurum Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Paramananda He Madhava Padunga Luchi Makaranda Se Makaranda Panakori Anande Bolo Hari Hari Harinka Name Vandavela Parikori Be Chakadola Se Chakadolanka Padaye Manamo Rahu Nirantare Manamo Nirantare Rahu Ha Krishna Boli Jiva Jao Ha Krishna Boli Jao Jiva Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Moteu Dada Radha Dava Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Good morning, dear devotees from Sri Jagannath Puri Dham. My name is Madhavananda Das. This is our 58th session we've had in this series we're calling the Meeting in Kurukshetra, in the 11th part of our series of Bhramara-gita, Uddhava's meeting with the Gopis in Vrindavan. My name is Madhavananda Das, and today we're going to speak something about how the Gopis are the purport of the verse Sarva, Dharman, Parityajya. So in our last session, we heard from text 6 to 8 of the 47th chapter, and the Gopis were speaking to Uddhava about the nature of friendship and what is hoitaki priti, what is motivated devotion, and what is unmotivated devotion. So today we'll be going through text number 9 and 10. And here now the Gopis in this Braj school of praying, now they're going to teach Uddhava by their example something about the purport of the Sarva Dharma Parityajya verse. So Sukadeva Goswami is speaking. Iti gopyo hi govinde gatavakaya manasaha Krishna dute samhayate Uddhave chakta lokikaha Gayancha priya karmani rudanchascha gatahriha tasya samsmitya yani kaishora balyayo. Thus speaking, the gopis whose words, bodies and minds were fully dedicated to Lord Govinda put aside all their regular work now that Krishna's messenger Sri Uddhava had arrived among them. Constantly remembering the activities their beloved Krishna had performed in his childhood and youth, they sang about them and cried without shame. So there's a number of important points in this verse. Both Jiva Goswami and Sanatana Goswami in their commentaries point out the importance of this very small word iti, thus. And we'll come back to that. One question also in this verse is though that Tasya samsmitya yani kaishora balyayo. Samsmitya again and again the gopis are intensely remembering the Kaishora Leela of Krishna, which means his pastimes of doing Ras Leela with the gopis and that, but also balyayo, his childhood pastimes. And what is the significance? Why are the gopis mentioning the childhood pastimes of Krishna? Why are they meditating on that? Because the gopis are vyavasayatmika buddhi, they're very one-pointed. Why are they singing about meditating on Krishna's childhood pastimes when the gopis like to meditate on Krishna with Srimati Radharani and performing pastimes with the gopis in this Kaishora Leela? Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that the words Chakya Lokika in this verse are very significant. Chakya means to give up, and Lokika means worldly affairs. This phrase indicates that the gopis, they gave up the customs of general society because they began to speak about, in a public way, Krishna's pastimes in his childhood and youth. And that's something the gopis generally didn't do. But here it said, Rudhanchascha gata hriya. The word hriya, gata hriya, means that they forgot all about, they gave up all their shyness. Generally, the gopis are very, very careful. They don't reveal their love for Krishna. Therefore, the word gopi comes from the same bij dhatu, gupt, which comes from the word hidden, or the word cave. All come from the same bij dhatu, the same thing. The gopis are those persons who hide their love. But now they're just openly singing about it. They're just openly speaking about Krishna. And Rudhancha, they're crying again and again and again. So Jiva Goswami says that they're speaking about his Kaishor Balyayo Leela, his Kaishor Leela and Bala Leela. And by speaking this, the gopis are looking back a little bit to the previous verse, and they're showing that our love for Krishna is nirupadika. It's not there's no motivation for it. And therefore we're always been meditating on Krishna, even from his Balya Leela. We love to hear about Krishna. It's not that there's some upadika, or some designation. There's not some motivation for the love. It's not hoitaki priti, as we spoke about in our last session. It's ahoitaki priti. It's not that our motivation is there only when Krishna is with us. No, we like to hear about Krishna anytime. And therefore, Sukadev Goswami describes that samsmita yani kaishorya balyayo. The gopis, again and again, they're meditating, they're speaking about these pastimes of Krishna. And Jiva Goswami says, commenting on the word iti gopihi govinde. Thus, the word iti means thus. Speaking in this way, thus, iti, the gopis, now they're giving up their reserve. Previously they were a little reserved. They were reserved about what? Jiva Goswami says, they were reserved about disrespecting someone who was Krishna's messenger. But now they've given up. So now this is a turning point in the Bhramara-gita with the words iti, thus. Now the gopis, they're giving up the reserve about disrespecting Krishna's messenger. That personality who's come on behalf of Govinda, who's attracting their minds and their bodies, who pervades all their senses, now the gopis, they've given that up. And Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Vaishnava Toshini, he says that, again, he comments on the word iti, and here he says that the word iti can mean several things. Iti means that the gopis stopped their duties. They just gave up everything. Or it can mean that in this way they gave up their duties by speaking about Krishna. And he says that previously, the word Govinda means that they previously gave up their bodies, minds, and words to that king of Gokul's Govinda, because Go means the senses, who pervades all their senses. He says that they'd offered all their body, their life heirs to him. Or it can mean that they forgot their bodies being absorbed in him. Or it can mean they gave their bodily activities for him. The first meaning, they gave their bodies to him or their bodily activities. Or they did their activities only for him. They did this because the messenger of that personality who attracted their hearts, Krishna, had arrived in Braj. And thus they gave up shame. Or another meaning is that they began to weep and they fainted. My Guru Maharaj, in the book Mathura Meets Vrindavan, in chapter 11, he speaks about these verses, and I'd like to share with you a few of the things that he says about it. This chapter, again, looking back on some of our previous discussions, is a very important chapter. And some Vaishnavas say that this 47th chapter, the 10th canto, is the most important chapter of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam because it indicates Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So my Guru Maharaj comments on this. He says that on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Krishna gave his most confidential instruction to Arjun, Mamana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru, that you should think of me, keep your mind on me. This is manmana. He says, but you can't find such an example in Bhagavad Gita. Krishna was only speaking theoretically. But there is an example in the 10th canto. And then he quotes a verse which we spoke about previously. This verse is from the previous chapter, the 46th chapter of the 10th canto. And this is a verse which is spoken by Krishna to Uddhava about the gopis. Tan manaska mat prana mararte chakta daihikaha mameva daitam prishtam atmana manasagataha ye chakcha loka dharmascha mararte tan bibhamyaham. A similar point is made here, that the gopis, they're giving up chakta lokika. This verse today, this 11th verse of this 47th chapter, is describing Chakta Loki Dekika. The same point is being made, that the gopis, Krishna tells Uddhava that the minds of the gopis, tan man manaska, their minds are absorbed in me. Mat prana, their lives are absorbed in me. Mat artha, everything they're giving for my sake. Chakta Daihika, they've given up everything on this bodily platform. The gopis are the example of Sarva, Dharman, Parityajya. So this is one of the reasons why this Sarva, Dharman, Parityajya verse is so important for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, because we have an example of the gopis. Prior to the gopis, there was no example of Sarva, Dharman, Parityajya. And my Guru Maharaj speaks, he says that Krishna was a theoretical speaker. He was just speaking something theoretical, but there was no example. He says the gopis are the example, because constantly at every moment they're thinking of Krishna. That's pure love. They're not forgetting Krishna even for a moment. Sadurlabha Bhagavata hi loke. And it's very, very rare, Adi Bhakti Suradoya describes, to find a devotee who has such love for Krishna, who thinks of Krishna at every moment. And my Guru Maharaj says we should try to understand this point. Without love, no one can think of Krishna. And sometimes he would famously say something which many devotees became disturbed by. He'd say, without love, your so-called surrender is either artificial, partial, or conditional. It's not real and it's not absolute unless you have love. And someone may say, well wait a minute, I thought we begin with surrender and we end with love. Our Guru Maharaj is speaking from a different kind of perspective. He was speaking from the perspective of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from the perspective of Bhramara-gita. That the gopis, they're the real examples of surrender. They're giving up everything. Mad arte chakta daihikaha, Krishna says. They've given up everything from me. Ye chakta loka dharmascha. They've given up all loka dharma, all different religiosity. This is Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Saranam Braja. And our Guru Maharaj also commented on this Sarva Dharman Parityajya verse, that when Krishna spoke this, the Bhagavad Gita finished. Because when he said the word Braj, he remembered Braj, he remembered Vrindavan, and he couldn't speak any further. And there's a problem with Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is very nice, but there's no practical example. So Krishna himself had to be the example of the Braj Gopika's love. He had to adopt their mood, which we find in this Bhramara-gita. So the gopis are the example. Krishna says, Ta man manaska mat prana. The gopis are always thinking of me. I'm in their mind. Mat prana, I'm their heart, their life, their soul. Chapta daihika. They're prepared to give up their bodies for me. Mameva daitam preshtam atmanam manasagata. Those gopis are very, very dear to me. They're my life. Krishna told Uddhava, Mam eva daitam preshtam atmanam manasagata. That these gopis, they're my life. Krishna previously, in the 9th canto of the Bhagavatam, he told Durvasa Muni, Sadhava hridayam mayam sadhanam hridayam tvaham mananyate na janati naham tebya managapi, that the devotees are always in my heart and I'm always in their heart. They don't know anything but me and I don't know anything but them. So this is the example. The gopis are the example of this. And Krishna's telling Uddhava, my Guru Maharaj says it, that the gopis are my life. And Uddhava, you think I'm here in Mathura, but really I'm there. Just externally I'm here in Mathura, doing something for my duties, for duty's sake. But really I'm there with him. My mind is there. My heart is there. My life is there in Braj Bhumi. So this is meeting in Kurukshetra. This is Jagannath Puri Dham. The place where the mantra is Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatume, that my dear Lord Jagannath, please let me see you. This is the mood of the gopis. The gopis are crying and crying, I want to see you, I want to see you. But they want to see Krishna in Vrindavan. As we sometimes commented, they don't want to see him in Mathura, Dwarka. They could go to Mathura, no problem. It's just a short walk, a few hours walk. But they don't, because they don't only want to see him, but see him means they want to render service to him. So this is the prayer in Jagannath Puri. But ironically, in this place, we're not allowed to see Jagannath. One of the few things I know how to say in Oriya, Bideshi Prabesh Nishad, foreigners not allowed entrance. And this is their mantra. And so devotees sometimes feel very hurt. This is not right. We can't go inside. But this is Braj Leela happening in Jagannath Puri. The gopis, they want to see Krishna. But they can't see Krishna because Krishna's gone to Mathura. Now he's become controlled by organized mechanical religion. And so they want to, when they want to meet him in Kurukshetra, and they want to bring him back to Jagannath Puri, which is a place of their ecstatic service. So sometimes the Pandits here in Puri, they've told us over the years at Madhavananda, you're very unfortunate. I say, why? And so because you can't go inside the Jagannath Mandir, you can't see Lord Jagannath. And I tell them, I don't have to go inside. Rather, I stay outside, and Lord Jagannath comes to see me. He comes to see all of his devotees. We call that Rath Yatra. And then I ask him a question. I say, you're a Panda. You know Shastra. You're Shastravit. So please tell me, who did Krishna give more mercy to? Did he give more mercy to the Brijbasis or more mercy to the Dwarkabasis, the residents of Vrindavan or Dwarka. And they say, everybody knows he gave more mercy to the Brijbasis. And I say, no, it's a lie. How can you say that? He left them. He made them cry. They couldn't see him. But the devotees in Dwarka were able to see him every day. But that, in the language of my Guru Maharaj, is apara vichar, or the apparent consideration. The tattva vichar, the absolute consideration, is that mam eva daitam preshtam atmanam manasagata. Krishna tells Uddhava, it looks like I'm here in Mathura, but really I'm there in Braj. My mind is there with the gopis. I'm only able to think of those gopis. My heart is there. So Guru Maharaj says, someone may ask, Krishna, how have you been put in such a condition? And the answer is, Ye chakta loka dharmascha madarte tan bibamyaham. That for my sake the gopis have given up ordinary happiness in this life. They've given up everything, and therefore I'm staying there in Vrindavan to sustain their lives. They have such intimate love for me, they've given up everything. They're even prepared to give up their bodies, but they've already kicked Veda Maryada Dharma, Vedic religious duties. They don't know what's good or what's bad. They've kicked away that which is very difficult to give up, Veda Dharma, Vedic regulations. They've kicked it away because they put their mind and heart on me. Yeyatam mam prapadyante tam sataiva bhajamyaham. Without this love, he says, there's no question of complete surrender. Sarva Dharman Parityajya mamekam sharanam braja. And therefore Krishna says, chakta, giving up. Ye chakta loka dharmascha mad arte tan bibamyaham. They've given up this loka dharma, Veda dharma, for me. Radharani, she says, Kova nayati jamuna pulinavani radha nama kulatapavada. Who's not going to the bank of the Jamuna to fetch water? But if Radharani goes there, she's condemned. Everyone says that Radharani's become kulata. Kulata means a prostitute. But Radharani accepts it. She says, yes, tomara lagya kalankera har, galai padi te pari. That for you, Krishna, I'm going to take this kalanka, this garland of criticism and blasphemy. This is a very nice garland for me. I'll put it around my neck. This is real love. This is ahoitaki priti. There's no motivation in it. It's not that the gopis are thinking, oh, if we love Krishna, then everyone's going to give respect to us. Rather, the gopis are thinking that if I reveal my love for Krishna, tomara lagya kalankara har, galya pariti pari, then everyone's going to criticize me. Very, very good. Ye chakya loka dharmascha marati tam bibamyaham. They've given up everything for Krishna. So this Sarva Dharma Parityajya verse wasn't really understood. It's not an easy thing to understand. In the Ramanuja Sampradaya, this is considered to be the Charama Shlok, or most important verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Once Kuresh, a very famous, intimate disciple of Ramanuja, who was a great scholar, came and asked his Guru Maharaj, what is the meaning of this Sarva Dharma Parityajya verse? And Ramanuja told him that to understand this verse, you have to give up all your independent desires and serve your Guru absolutely for an entire year. Only such a person can understand the meaning of this verse, and no one else. The gopis can understand the meaning of this verse because they have no independent desires and they're completely serving Krishna, giving up everything. So when Ramanuja told this to Kuresh, Kuresh said, that's not fair. He said, life is uncertain. I don't know if I'm going to live, I'm going to die. I don't know if I'll live for another year. So please give me your mercy and give me your mercy so they'll understand the meaning of this verse in my heart. And Ramanuja thought for a moment, and then he said, okay, if for 1 month you live by begging alms, going door to door without knowing where your next meal comes from, then you'll begin to realize the meaning of full surrender. And at that time, I'll instruct you in all the meanings of this glorious verse. So Kuresh did like that. And when 1 month had passed, then Ramanuja revealed to him the meaning the inner meaning of this verse. So this is very, very important. And we see that our Gaudiya Vaishnavas, they've stressed this Saranagati. Thakur Bhaktivinoda has written a whole songbook here in Orissa called Saranagati. And in the opening song, a song my Guru Maharaj liked to sing very much, he describes, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kori Swapashada Swiyadam Saha Avatari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Hare Hare. The Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kori. Out of mercy on the conditioned souls, to show compassion to them, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has descended to this world, Saparshada Swiyadam, along with his Parshadas, along with his intimate companions. And who are those intimate companions? They're like Swarup Damodar and Roy Ramananda, who are Lalita and Vishaka, who know this Saranagati. And he comes with this dham, this abode, Golokera Premadana Harinama Sankirtan. He comes with this Harinam Sankirtan, this Kirtan, descending from Goloka Vrindavan. And he comes and manifests his pastimes in Gambhira, in Jagannath Puri, which are in the mood of the Gopis in the Bhramara-gita. And he comes there for a particular purpose. Achanta durlabha prema kori baridan Shikaya sharanagati pakatera pran Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram, Ram Hare Hare. Ajanta durlabha prema kori baridan. He's come to give this ecstatic prema of the gopis, something which is very, very difficult, Atyanta Durlabha, to get. And to do this, to get this thing, Shikaya Sharanagati Bhakatera Pran. He's teaching the Saranagati, the example of which is the Gopis of Braj, as seen in this Bhramara-gita. And he says the Saranagati Bhakatera Pran, this is the very life of the devotees. And what is that Saranagati? There's 6 different aspects of Saranagati. Sadanga Saranagati, he says. Dainya Atma Nivedan Gopri Jevaran Avasharakshibe Krishna Vishvasapalan Bhaktiyanu Kula Matya Karyaraj Svikar Bhakti Pratikula Bhavarjanangikar. We often speak about this Saranagati, and this is also given many places in our Gaudiya literatures. In Hari Bhakti Vilas, Srila Sanatana Goswami, Gopal Bhatta Goswami, they've given this Atmanivedan, which begins, the first is Dainya, humility, and that Dainya is exemplified again by the gopis. We see that Dainya Bhav in Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, in the mood of the gopis, because in that separation, that Dainya comes stronger and stronger. And then comes Atmanivedan, where they give up everything. This is the example of the gopis. Goptidre Varana, that they accept Krishna as their only maintainer. Krishna is their only maintainer. They're going to die in separation from Krishna. The only way they can continue to live is because Krishna is keeping them alive. They have this consciousness of Vasya Rakshibe Krishna, that Krishna will definitely protect me. And that's Vishvas, that's firm faith in Krishna's protection, his Pavana. They have this Bhakti Anukula Matra Karya Srikar. They're only doing activities which are favorable, which are appreciated for Krishna. And Bhakti Pratikula Bhav Vajanangikar. They're giving up anything which is not pleasing to Krishna, which is not for Krishna. And therefore the gopis are Sarva Dharman Parityajya. They've given up everything. They gave up their families. They're the examples of this. Sridhar Swami, in his Krita, his commentary on this, on the Bhagavad Gita, he speaks of these verses, Sarva guyatamam bhuya sriname paramam vacha istosi meditam iti tato vakshami te hitam. All of this is indicating the gopis. So Krishna's telling us to Arjuna, Sarva guyatamam bhuya. I'm telling you this because you're my dear friend. This is Sarva guyatama. This is guyatama. Atama. It's the most confidential, Sarva guya, of everything. And I'm speaking this to you because Ista me dridam. You're very, very dear to me. And Sridhar Swami comments on this verse, Ati Gambiram Gita Shastram. He says, through my teachings, this most secret of all secrets has been given. Puna puna katane hetum ahadridam achantam me mamatvam ishta priyostisiti matvatata eva hetoste hitam vakshami. And he tells, Sridhar Swami comments, that Krishna is saying this to Arjuna, that the reason Puna Puna Katane, for declaring us again and again, is because you are very, very dear to me. And this is why I'm giving this knowledge. This is the most confidential thing. This thing can't be understood by someone who's not the most dear to me, indicating someone who doesn't have ecstatic love for me, indicating someone whose love is not ahoitiki priti, as the gopis were speaking in the previous texts, who doesn't have love which is unmotivated. Everyone else's love is hoitiki. It has some motivation. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, in his commentary on this Gita verse, says, Istosi me dutam atisayina eva priyo me saka bhavisati tatta eva hetor hitam te iti sakyayam vinati harashyam. Vinati rahashyam nakam api kashchid api brutta iti bhava. Because, he says, because you're very dridam, very dear to me, you're my friend, I'm speaking this to you. This is a rahashyam topic, the most confidential thing. And without such intimacy, I can't speak about this topic. And what is this topic? Krishna goes on to say in the next verse, Mamana bhava mad bhakto madhyaji mam namaskar mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijani priyosi me. That you should always think of me. You should be my devotee. You should worship me. Offer your obeisances to me. And if you do that, then I promise you're going to come to me without fail. And I'm saying this to you because priyosi me, because you're very, very dear to me. So this is Gopi Bhav. This is Krishna's relationship with the gopis being indirectly described in the Bhagavad Gita. Because the gopis are the example of Mamana Bhava Mad Bhakto. They're the ones who've given up their minds to Krishna. They've given up everything. And Krishna's saying that if you do that, Mami Vaishyasi Satyam Te. Satyam means definitely. Sridhar Swami, in his commentary on this verse, in the Gita, he says that I'm saying this, it's a vow, it's a promise. Because the gopis are wondering, how are we going to achieve Krishna? Krishna says, don't worry, Mamana Bhava Mad Bhakto, you fix your minds on me, the Mami Vaishyasi Satyam Te Satyam, it's a fact that you're going to come to me. And why? How can I pratijani? Pratijan means I'm promising, because priyosi me, because you're very, very dear to me. In his Sa'artha Darshani commentary in this verse, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments, he says, Yadva Mamana Bhava Mayam Shama Sundaraya Susnigda Kunichata Kuntalakaya Sundara Bhu Vali Madhura Kripa Kataksham Rita Varshi Vadana Chandraya Sriyam Dayatvena Mano Yesha Tata Bhuto Bhav. He says this is the meaning of this phrase, Mamana Bhava Mad Bhakto. It means fix your minds completely on Sham Sundar, Krishna, who has a moon-like face, who has beautiful hair and beautiful eyebrows. And it was raining nectar, it was showering down Amrit in the form of his he says, Sundarabru means his very beautiful eyebrows. Vali Madhura Kripa Katakshamrita. Varshi Vadana Chandra. Varshi means a shower down of nectar, of a rainfall, of Amrit, of nectar, which is his Kripa Kataksha, his sidelong glance of mercy. This is what the gopis are always desiring to have, that Kripa Kataksha Stava, or that sidelong glance of mercy from the Lord. So, this is the meaning of Mamanabhava Mad Bhakto. The gopis are the embodiment of Mamanabhava Mad Bhakto. The gopis are the embodiment of Sarva Dharman Parityajya. A very, very difficult verse to understand. Krishna is saying that give up all religion. But wait a minute, I thought Bhagavad Gita was all about religion. But Krishna says no. Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Braja. Sridhar Swami, in his Krita commentary on this verse, he says that Krishna is saying his meaning, he's referring to all the other types of dharma that he gave before. Now you just surrender to this dharma, Mamanabhava Mad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. You just fix your mind upon me completely. And don't worry about anything. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo. You don't worry about your sin. Moksha yashami masucha. Don't think that, if I give up dharma, it's going to be a big problem. Srila Prabhupada, in his commentary in this 66th verse of the Gita, he quotes Hari Bhakti Vilas, Anukul yasya sankalpa pratikul yasya varjanam rakshishachiti visvaso guptite varanam tatatma nikshepa karpanya sadvida saranagati. That the meaning of this verse is given in Hari Bhakti Vilas, that is speaking about these 6 different types of surrender. These 6 different types of surrender are the life of the devotees. Life of the devotees means that the life of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna, who's come as a devotee, because he wants to experience the Saranagati, because he sees the gopis experience this Saranagati in this Bhramara-gita. So then Krishna goes on to say in the Gita, he says that I'm speaking to you, iti guyata guyatamam, this most confidential thing, which is what? Mamanabhava Mad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. Fix your mind upon me, be my devotee. Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Braja. Give up all types of religion, just surrender to me. And then he says, Idam te narapaskaya nabhakte kadachana nachashushave vachana chamam yo bisuyati. That you can't give this knowledge to someone who's atapaskaya, who doesn't have any tapasya, who's not austere, who's a bhakta, who's not a devotee, nachashushave, who's not ashushave, who's not engaged in service to me, and is abhyasuyati, who's someone who's envious to me. You can't speak this to them. So this message is for the gopis of Braj. Because the gopis of Braj, they're the supreme devotees. The gopis of Braj, they're completely austere. They're giving up everything to Krishna. And therefore, a hidden meaning of this verse also in the Gita is that if we want to understand this, we have to adopt the Saranagati. And therefore, this Saranagati is stressed so much by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and by the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because of this Bhramara-gita, because of the example of the Bhramara-gita. Raghunath Das Goswami stresses this in his Manasiksha in the 2nd verse. Na dharmam Shrutigana niruktam kilakuru Braje Radha Krishna Prachura Parityajya Mihatanu Sachi Sunam Nandishvarapati Sutatve Guruvaram Mukunda Prestatve Smara Paramajashram Nanumana. He says, my dear mind, Nadarmam Nadarmam, don't pay attention to dharma or adharma, pious activities, religious activities, or adharma, Shrutigana niruktam kilakura, which are all described in the Shruti and all the different Vedic literatures. Rather, Braje Radha Krishna Prachura Parityajam Ihatanu. Rather, you should focus on service to Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. And if you want to do that, Sachi sunam nandishvarapati sutatve guruvaram mukunda prestatve smaraparamajashram nanumana. You have to render service to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You have to surrender to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And you should remember that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's actually Krishna. And you should always understand Mukunda Preshtatve Smara Paramajashram Nanumana, that my Gurudev is Mukunda Preshta. He's very, very dear to Mukunda. So what is the meaning of this? Why is Raghunath Das Goswami speaking this? Raghunath Das Goswami is the Swarupa Raghu. He's the follower of Swarup Damodar. Raghunath Das Goswami has had privy to Mahaprabhu's Gambhira Leela, his crying in the Gambhira, just as this verse today is speaking about how the gopis are rodanti, they're crying and crying in separation from Krishna, and they're remembering him again and again. This is Mahaprabhu's mood in the Gambhira because he's Krishna, he has to repay his debt to the gopis. He has to come in the same mood, and he needs a teacher to do that. So this is all about school. This is all about education. Krishna sent Uddhava from Mathura. Uddhava is the best of the devotees in Mathura. And Krishna sends him to Braj to come to a higher platform, to learn from the gopis. So in the previous verses 6 to 8, Uddhava learned something about what is real friendship, what is real love, what is hoitiki priti, what is ahoitiki priti, what is sopadika priti, what is love with a designation and love without a designation. He learned those things, and now he's learning something about, by the example of the gopis, something about what is real surrender. Because guru means that. Guru means someone who gives an example. And so when Raghunath Das Goswami is saying Mukunda Preshtatve Smara Paramajashram Nanumana, that you should remember your Gurudev, who's very, very dear to Mukunda. Who is the Guru who's very, very dear to Mukunda? Is Srimati Radharani. And therefore, in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna says that Srimati Radharani, she's my Guru. She's my Guru in loving affairs. And because we're remembering this thing, that Srimati Radharani, she's defeated Krishna. And the proof that she's defeated Krishna is that Krishna has come in the mood of a devotee, in the mood of Radharani, trying to understand what is her mood. And he's come to learn from Lalita and Vishaka, who have come as Swarup Damodar and Roy Ramananda. So we should understand from this verse what then is really sin and what really is dharma. In the Skanda Purana, it's described, Sakarta sarva dharmanam bhakto yastava keshava sakarta sarva papanam yona bhaktas chayachuta. My dear Keshava, Sakarta sarva dharmanam. Someone who's your devotee, he's sarva dharmanam. He's done all dharma. Bhakto yastava keshava. He's your devotee. But sakarta sarva papanam yona bhaktas tavachuta. Someone who's not your devotee, he's a papi. And it doesn't matter whether that devotee is Garuda, who's eating fish and eating snakes and turtles and different things like that. But he's really a devotee. Or someone may be like Durvasa Muni, who looks like a great, great rishi, but because he's not the devotee of Krishna, at least in the 9th canto of the Bhagavatam, the beginning of that pastime, even though he looks like such a great religious person. Papam bhavati dharmo pi tava bhakta kritam hare nisesha karma kartava prabhakto narake patet. Says, my dear Lord, that even sinful activities committed by your devotees are considered to be religious. Papam bhavati dharmo pi. If your devotee does some sinful thing, that's considered to be religious. But nisesha karma kartava, someone who's not a devotee, whatever they do, a bhakta narake patet, they're going to go to hell. And whatever they do is an irreligious activity. even though it looks like a religious activity. And therefore, there's a verse in Padma Purana which is often quoted by our Goswamis. It's quoted in Hadi Bhakti Vilasa, it's quoted in Bhakti Sandarbha. Very difficult verse to understand. But if we want to understand something about the mood of the gopis and how the gopis are loka taika, they're giving up all mundane religion, we should understand this verse. Krishna says this to Arjuna. Manimitam kritam papam api dharmaya kolpate mamanaditya dharmopi papam shanma prabhavata. Manimitam kritam papam. If someone does pop, but they do it for me. The gopis are doing pop for Krishna. They're doing something very sinful. They're leaving their lawfully wedded husbands. And they're running out in the dead of night to Krishna. They're giving up their children. They're giving up their families. They're going to Krishna. But manimitam kritam papam, that pop, api dharmaya kalpate, becomes real dharma. But mama naditya dharmopi, Krishna says, if someone's not my devotee, if they're not worshipping me, then their dharma, mama naditya dharma, papam shanmat prabhavata, then their so-called dharma becomes pop. A very, very important point to understand. And therefore, Raghunath Das Goswami is saying, Nadharmam na dharmam. Don't pay attention to dharma or adharma. Just surrender to Krishna. Just follow in the mood of the gopis. Just perform the Saranagati, which we learn from the gopis in this 47th chapter of the Bhramara-gita. Jiva Goswami quotes this verse in one purport in the Bhagavatam, and he tells a very amazing story. This is a story from South India of one of the Alwars. His name was Tirumangai Alwar. And from his childhood, Tirumangai was going to all the different holy places to serve the Lord. And as he was traveling around, he met 4 different persons who became attracted to him, and they became his disciples. And those 4 persons had some mystic perfections. They had mystic cities. Their names are Tarka Chudamani, Dwara Umochaka, Chayagraha, and Jala Parityajya. Tarka Chudamani had this ability that Chudamani means a crest jewel of Tarka, of argument. No one could defeat him in debate. Dwara Umochaka means he can open any door. And this was his mystic power. Chayagraha means that whoever he would touch their shadow, they couldn't move. And Jalaparityajya means someone who could walk on the water. And so these 4 disciples, Tirumangai Alwar was wandering around, and one day they came to the temple of Lord Ranganath, and they saw the temple was falling apart. There was all kinds of weeds and things. And there were leather shoes there in the courtyard by the temple. And the pujaris were only coming once a day to do the worship because they were afraid of tigers and jackals. And when he saw that Tirumangai Alwar, he became very distressed and also very angry. This is the example that Jiva Goswami gives of this verse. And Tirumangai Alwar was thinking to himself, all these great Vishayis, these materialistic people, they're living in big, big palaces. They have all kinds of beautiful women. They're doing all kinds of lusty affairs. Meanwhile, the Lord of the universe, the King of kings, the soul of everyone, is staying in a broken temple that's being neglected. He thought the demons, they're taking Krishna's wealth. This is very bad. But Tirumangai Alwar, he was just a poor Hare Krishna devotee. He joined the Hare Krishna movement when he was a young boy. He didn't have any college education. He didn't have a good job. He didn't have any money. He didn't know what to do. And so then he made a plan, along with his 4 disciples. So they decided they would go to rich people to beg alms from them. And they would go there, and the wealthy people, they were so proud and so attached to their wealth, they wouldn't give him anything. And he would say, please go to the door. He would say, Bo Mata, Bhagavati Bhiksham Dehi. My dear Mataji, please give me some alms. And they would look at him and say, what do you need money for? You're a sadhu. If you want money, go get a job. Leave me alone. But Tirumangai Alwar, he wouldn't give up. And so finally he decided, we're going to steal it from them. And so they became a gang of thieves. And Tarkachuta Muni, the first disciple, he would engage this materialistic people in argument, because materialistic people, they really like to argue. That's why they really like Facebook, because it's a great place to come and argue, and you just completely waste your time. And you have the satisfaction saying, yes, I defeated them in argument on Facebook. But it has no meaning. So the Tarkachuta Muni would do like that. And meanwhile, while he's arguing with them, then Dwara Umochika would go and open up the door to their treasury house, while Chayagraha would step on their shadows, and so nobody could move, which is what happens if you want to become Tarkachuta Muni. You can't move anywhere because you become stuck. Therefore it said Tarko Apratisha, that argument has no benefit in bhakti. Sanatana Goswami in Brihad Bhagavatamrita says that sometimes devotees engage in some argument for the benefit of innocent people who may be standing by and watching. But otherwise it's useless. So Tarkachuta Muni would engage him in argument. Dwara Umochika, while they're arguing, he would go and open up the treasury house. Chayagraha would make so that nobody could move. While Jalaparichar, he could enter the palaces that were surrounded by deep moats of water. He could walk on the water, and he would take all the wealth. And so when they collected so much wealth, then Tirumanga Alwari brought so many expert artists from different places, and they built a very beautiful 7-story temple there for Lord Ranganath. So all this was going on, but at the same time, Tirumanga Alwar himself was only eating once a day. Very, very simple things. He would offer that to the Lord and take the remnants. He was fully surrendered and engaging in the Lord's service with all of his senses. So it's a very difficult story to understand, especially the end of it, because Jiva Goswami explains that at one point the thieves, he also engaged many different rogues and ruffians, not just his 4 saintly disciples, but also a number of ruffians in the service of robbing the rich. And he promised them that we're going to share this money. And so at one point those Gundas, they came to him and said, so where's the money? And then Tirumanga thought for a moment. He said, well, I hid it on an island in the Kaveri River. And tomorrow I'll make some arrangement. I'll make a boat for you. You can go on the boat, and you go to the island, and you can get all the wealth there. I said, very, very good. And so he arranged for a nice boat. That boat had so many stones in it. And as soon as it got out in the middle of the river, it sank. And all those Gundas, they died. So Tirumanga Alwar is a great devotee. And his activity is service to the Lord. How do we understand that? Manimitam kritam papam apidharmaya kalpate. Although he's doing something which is sinful, he's robbing from the rich. Apidharmaya kalpate. Krishna says that becomes dharma because it's pleasing to me. He's doing it for me. And even though he killed these Gundas, that's also beneficial for them. By doing that in such a simple way, Tirumanga Alwar gave those persons who had no qualification, who'd never done any bhajan, who'd never done anything pious, who'd killed people, who'd done so many terrible things, but they had one good quality: they'd render service to Krishna's devotee. And so he arranged for them to drown in the Kaveri River, by which they all got liberation. It was a great blessing. Externally, it looks like something very, very sinful. Very, very difficult to understand such a devotee. And therefore, we understand Madhavananda Puri, who is the root of the tree of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's described, Rupa Goswami gives in his Pajavali some verses by Madhavananda Puri. Sanja vandana bhajamastu bhavato Bosnana tubhyam namo Bodeva pitarascha tarpana vido Naham shamaksham yataham Yatra kvapi nasadya yadavakulo Tang sasya kang sadvishaha Smaram smaram agam harami tadalam Manye kem anyena me. He says that Sandhyavandana Bhadramastu. He says, my dear Sandhyavandana, Bhadram, all auspiciousness to you. Bo Snana Tubhyam, oh my dear daily bath. Namo Bo, I offer my obeisances to you. O Deva, O demigods, O Pitara, O my forefathers, Tarpana Vido, I'm supposed to be offering his Tarpana to you. He says, Kshamam Kshamyavitam, please forgive me. Now I'm not doing any of those things anymore. I'm giving up my Sandhyavandana. I'm giving up my sacred bath. I'm giving up doing worship of the Devatas. I'm giving up worshiping my forefathers and doing Tarpana. I'm giving up all those things. And now just Nisadya Yadava Utams, I'm just sitting in one place and I'm worshiping Kamsa Dvisha, that person who's the enemy of Kamsa. Smadam, I'm just remembering him over and over again. And by remembering him, Agam Harami, all my sins are going away. Tadalam manya kimanyena me. What is the use of anything else? This is the mood of the Gopis. We find in this 9th and 10th verses in the 47th chapter. Snanam lanam abut kriya nachakriya sandhya chavandya bhavad Veda kedam avapa shastra patali samputi tanta sputa dharmo marmahato yadharma nichaya prayakshayam praptavan Chittam chumbati yadavindra charanam boje mamarhanisham. He says that snanam lanam abut, my ritual bath is just like withered away and gone away. Kriya nakriya, my Vedic studies, all these religious studies are all undone. My Sandhyavandana, my prayers at sunrise, at noon, and sunset, they're all unsaid. The 4 Vedas now, they're unhappy. Veda Kedam Avapi. Kedam means unhappy. The Vedas have become unhappy because I'm not quoting them anymore. I'm not reciting the 4 Vedic literatures anymore. And all the other scriptures are staying boxed up in the heart. But at the same time, he says that all my sins are going away. Sarva Dharman put it together. Mame kam shanam braja aham tam sarva pape byo moksa yashami masucha. Because day and night my heart is kissing the 2 lotus feet of Lord Yadavendra Krishna. In the Bhagavad Gita, it said Vyavasayatmika buddhi, that we should be very one-pointed. Baladeva Vidyabhushan, he defines this as Bhagavat Archana Rupaika Nishkam Karma Bir Vishuddha Chitta in his commentary in the Gita. He says accepting transcendental loving service of the Lord as a prime duty, free from fruit of reaction. That's the purport of Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. The Gopis are the purport of Vyavasayatmika Buddhi. They're very one-pointed. And therefore, they're giving up all different types of dharma. So we should be very, very careful. Sometimes when we have to follow some dharma, we call that Vaidhi Bhakti. And Thakur Bhaktivinoda in Chaitanya Sikshamrita, he says as long as someone has material desires, they have to follow all the rules of Varnashram Dharma. What are all the rules of Varnashram Dharma? My God, there's a whole library, not just an encyclopedia, but a whole library of books describing all the rules and rituals and subtle things to follow in Varnashram Dharma. One lifetime is practically not enough just to read all the books, much less try to follow all of it. So what does it mean to follow all the rules of Varnashram Dharma? It means that we should follow Gurudev. We should follow what Gurudev has given us. Prabhupada in the Gita, in the 3rd chapter, in Purport, he says that following Varnashram Dharma means to follow the instructions of Gurudev. But a difficulty is there. Thakur Bhaktivinoda in Chaitanya Sikshamrita, in a section which we printed recently in our Krishna Katamrita Bindu, he says that sometimes people, they're attached to Varnashram Dharma in a very sectarian way. And here it is, right here. He says that because of that, they may not respect a proper Vaishnava. He says they're bound up to Varnashram, the system, by prejudice. They're prejudiced because they're thinking this means religion. They can't understand manimitam kritam papam api dharmaya kalpate. They can't understand how someone does pop and it becomes dharma. They can't understand how Krishna is saying Sarva Dharman Parityajya, give up all types of dharma and just surrender to me. Even here in Orissa, there 500 years ago, there was one, 400 years ago, there was one Rishi who wrote a commentary on the Mahabharata, wrote an audio version of the Mahabharata. And he described there that the reason why Krishna had to be shot in the foot by the hunter Jara and left his body was because he'd married so many gopis of Braj, because he dallied with the wives of other men. And because of that sinful thing, he got this reaction. He can't understand what is Sarva Dharman Parityajya. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that those who are bound up to the Varnashram system by prejudice, they fail to get a taste for higher levels of bhakti. And sometimes hatred, which degrades a person even more, may also appear. They become bound up by all the rules and regulations. And therefore, the example is given of the gopis. Give up everything for Krishna. Na dharmam na dharmam shrutigana niruktam kilakuru. Raghunath Das Goswami says, don't pay attention to dharma or adharma. Nanda Kumar Prabhu, Prabhupada's disciple, one of my favorite devotees, a very, very gentle, sweet devotee, was Prabhupada's personal servant for some time. And he also traveled with Srila Prabhupada in India. And he commented about Srila Prabhupada, how Prabhupada used to, over and over again, used to say how one of the most important requisites for a cook or a pujari is cleanliness and punctuality. And so they were traveling in India with Srila Prabhupada. And sometimes they would go to wealthy people's homes, and sometimes they would take them to small temples. And once they were with Srila Prabhupada, and they went to some local Christian temple, and it was filthy dirty. And Nanda Kumar Prabhu commented that the pujari looked like a wild man. His front teeth were missing. He had wild hair going everywhere. He looked filthy dirty. And he was like a crazy man. During the artik, he was just offering the items really quick. And then he took the water and he threw it, turned around and threw it in their faces. And the artik. So as they were going away, Nanda Kumar Prabhu was watching all this, and he's trying to figure this out, because he's always heard from Prabhupada, right, that cleanliness and punctuality are so important. Here's this crazy man. So as they were going away, he said, Srila Prabhupada, I have a question about this temple. And Prabhupada didn't look at him, and he said, ask me later. He didn't say anything. And then later on, when there was nobody else around, because Nanda Kumar Prabhu understood Srila Prabhupada, right? That when Prabhupada sometimes didn't like to answer certain questions in public. So then when no one else was around, Prabhupada said, so what is your question? And Nanda Kumar said, Prabhupada, you told us that cleanliness is essential in deity worship, but that temple was filthy dirty. So I wonder, was Krishna really there? And Nanda Kumar Prabhu said that Prabhupada replied, yes, Krishna is there. Our standard is cleanliness, and you keep that standard. Don't judge anyone else but what they do. You have your standard, but you don't try to judge anyone else. And he said, I saw that pujari. He was a different kind of person, but his heart was for Krishna. And therefore, that's what we see. And Nanda Kumar Prabhu commented, he said that many times Prabhupada either said to me, or I heard him say, that all the rules and regulations are meant for us to apply to ourselves, but they're not meant to judge anybody else. So our surrender means Mukunda Preshtatve Smada Padamajasham Nanamana, that we meditate on our Gurudev as Mukunda Preshta, as so very, very dear to Krishna, because he's Nikunja Yuno Rati Keli Siddhyai. He's making arrangements for the gopis. We see this connection our Gurudev is Mukunda Preshta because he's very, very dear to the Gopis. And the Gopis, they know what is real surrender. Gurudev knows what is real surrender. We have to begin our surrender from some point. It's not that we just do anything that we like. Like I heard, I had one Sankirtan leader at one point, and he decided, I don't want to spend Krishna's money. And so he went into a shoe store, and he left his old shoes, and he put on a brand new pair of shoes and walked out of the store with them. And they arrested him. And he had to go to jail for that. A similar thing happened once to Jayananda. But Jayananda is on a much different platform. My Sankirtan leader was a nice devotee, but he wasn't like Jayananda Prabhu. Jayananda Prabhu, once he had to have a new pair of pants. His old pants were just getting so worn out that it was becoming indecent to wear them. And he needed something to work on the Rath Yatra cart and thing. But he couldn't tolerate to spend Prabhupada's money on such a thing. And so he went into a clothing store, and he put on a pair of pants over his pants, and he went walking out. And the security caught him, and they arrested him, and they took him to court. And in the court, Jayananda Prabhu, he was so sincere, such a great devotee. He told them, "Sir, please, I'm a monk, and I did this for my spiritual master because I can't tolerate. We want to use everything for God." Much in the same way as Tirumangai Alwar. And Jayananda Prabhu was so sincere, he melted the heart of the judge and of the prosecutor. The prosecutor decided, we're going to withdraw the charges. We won't charge this person. He's such a saintly person. It was so obvious to him. So for someone on the platform of Tirumangai Alwar, for someone on the platform of Jayananda Prabhu, for someone like the Gopis, they Sarva Dharman Pritya. They give up everything because they know what is the desire of Krishna, because they're completely surrendered to Krishna. But for those of us who don't know what is the desire of Krishna, for us, our Sarva Dharman Pritya means that we have to follow strictly the orders of our Gurudev. So I'm going to stop there. I'm sorry for going a little bit over. There's a lot of subtle things today. Nice to see all the devotees here. If anybody has any reflections or comments, they can go ahead and make that. Nice to see Ujjwala Rashiga and Antayami Prabhu and Natalia. Yashoda Dulal Prabhu, Hare Krishna. He comments, thank you, great points about the Gopis being Sarva Dharman Parityajya. And without love, no one can think of Krishna. Ujjwala Rashiga says that she's reflecting, keep Krishna on the platform of love. Bhramara said that. And she says, Atyanta Durlabha Prema Sikaya Shanagati. Reading the bhajan on her own is one thing, but when Maharaj brings it up and explains it, it doesn't get any better than that. Brajavanita is there. Hare Krishna, nice to see you. Natalia comments, thank you. My gifts for contemplation. Without love, one's surrender is not real. Only an ahoitaki devotee can understand what it means to think about Krishna Sham Sundar and give up everything like the Gopis. Mahaprabhu came to practice 6 waves of Saranagati like the Gopis. Yashoda Dulal Prabhu comments, your statement that those who still have material desires must follow all the rules of Varnashram Dharma, all the rules. He says, I'm actually reading chapter 17 of the 11th canto right now. Krishna's description of the Varnashram system, and my heart sank. But then you revived my heart by saying, following all the rules of Varnashram Dharma means to follow the order of Gurudev. Not that it's easy, but that one can do. It's not easy to follow even the orders of Gurudev. It's so hard for us, even following 4 regulated principles, chanting 16 rounds, that's a very, very difficult thing for us. But we do that and we follow some other instruction. Gurudev may say, you go out and do book distribution. I want you to worship Jagannath. I want you to cook, whatever. And Krishna Kun, Vasanta Prabhu is here also. I couldn't read in Russian. He's saying, I was always wondering, what is the impurity of love of Vaikuntha? What is their motivation in service? Is this type of love still religious? God is a guarantee of my happiness. Why is only the Gopis' love ahoitaki? The Gopis' love is ahoitaki. The love of Vaikuntha is also pure, but it's hoitaki priti. The love of the Mahishis, the queens of Dwarka, is hoitaki priti. It's sopadika priti. Sopadika priti means love with a designation, because it's their love for the Lord is patitva. They have some motivation that he's my husband. In Vaikuntha, they have some designations. But the love of the gopis is ahoitaki. Because they're breaking. They have some designation. They have some upadi. Their upadi, their designation is they're married to someone else. But they're giving up that upadi. And therefore their love is ahoitaki. It has no motivation. I hope that helps for Santa Prabhu. Brenda Sundari, nice to see you. Hare Krishna. She says, sorry I arrived late. Thank you for the Katha. So anybody else has any reflections? Maybe anybody here in the room? They can go ahead and share something. Anybody? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and stop now. Krishna